Hey there, and welcome to part 2 of this 16-part mini-series on healing, CFS, Fibro, CIRS, MCAS, and more with a trauma-informed approach. I'm Jennifer Ellis Schutz, and this is the Wellness Code Academy channel. If this video and this series inspires you, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified so that you don't miss out on any of this incredible content. So, in the last video, I covered step 1 of the Wellness Code approach, which is to cultivate a growth mindset for healing and personal success. And while there were many key concepts introduced in this video, I feel the 2 biggest takeaways are as follows. Number 1, while our genetic blueprint does indeed play a role in determining our biology, it is only upwards of 20%. With environmental inputs being the other 80%, and thus supporting that we are masters of our biology and creators of our destiny through our daily lifestyle choices, much more than we have ever been led to believe. And at the top of the list of the most influential inputs upon our genes, aside from diet, lifestyle habits, relationships, and our environments, is the way we think about ourselves, our situations, and life in general, which is essentially our mindset. And number 2, as Carl Jung, world-renowned psychologist, so eloquently taught during his time, until we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct our lives, and we'll call it fate. This said, it's now time to discuss step number 2 of the Wellness Code approach for resolving complex chronic health issues, which is resetting the circadian clock. This said, before diving into deeper concepts on this topic, it's important to establish that though most, if not all people, understand that sleep is indeed important for health restoration and optimization, I've come to learn that most people don't truly understand what circadian rhythm is, nor the profound and lasting ill effects that lack of consistent restorative sleep has on human health, particularly the health of our mitochondria. To add to this, I will emphasize that mitochondria are basically the gatekeepers of health and longevity. If our mitochondria are unwell, we are unwell, and it's only a matter of time before dis-ease takes hold if our mitochondria are not given what they need to be strong and vital. And which one of the most critical factors for optimal mitochondrial health is being in rhythm with the light and dark cycles of nature and getting consistent, deep, restorative sleep, which is something many people do not get. This said, in this video, I will cover the following. Number 1, why most doctors cannot likely help people with complex chronic health conditions, why adrenal fatigue is an outdated model and what's really going on, foundational principles of sleep, energy, and circadian rhythm, hallmark signs of reduced cellular energy production, the number 1 cause of chronic dis-ease, why creating sustainable wellness does not begin with supplements, detox, or pathogen eradication protocols, and strategies for resetting the circadian clock to restore mitochondrial health. As much as most people may not want to hear or accept this, conventional medicine, which the grand majority of people turn to when they first become chronically ill, myself included at one time, has little to nothing to offer for those suffering with complex chronic conditions such as CFS, Fibro, CIRS, MCAS, and more. The current medical paradigm was simply not designed to provide adequate support to those struggling with chronic illness. It was designed for emergency medicine, acute illness, diagnosing disease, and pharmacology, which, don't get me wrong, are all definitely highly needed services for the right scenarios. Unfortunately, however, these services fall woefully short when it comes to resolving and supporting chronic issues. This said, standard lab testing only shows remarkable findings upwards of 5% of the time in terms of figuring out the root causes of chronic fatigue and other complex conditions. The main treatment options include to rule out major disease such as cancer, physical, occupational, and/or graded exercise therapy of some kind, antidepressants, anti-anxiety medications, anti-inflammatories, and other medications, stimulants, and cognitive behavioral therapy or some other psychological-based intervention. This said, while medications may offer temporary improvement and they can be needed in certain scenarios, they often, if they're depended upon, drive dysfunction deeper into the body if root causes of fatigue and inflammation are not properly sorted out, which, as emphasized in the earlier videos within this series, is a multifaceted process. Nowhere within the conventional medical setting will significant enough, if any, attention be given to optimizing mitochondrial health, which, as stated in the beginning of this video, is heavily reliant upon resetting one's circadian clock and optimizing sleep. Okay, so many people that struggle with chronic fatigue and inflammatory conditions, such as the ones that this series is about, are often told that they have a condition known as adrenal fatigue. So I hate to break this to you, but the theory behind this model of low cortisol output is simply outdated and not accurate in most cases. One exception is Addison's disease, which is actually quite rare. What's really going on is that when cortisol levels drop off and chronic exhaustion and inflammation set in, it's rarely because the adrenals are too fatigued to produce cortisol, but rather a compensatory mechanism of the body to protect itself from various stressors, and thus a purposeful downregulation of cortisol production. And this is right in alignment with chronic cell danger response mode, which will cause cellular energy production to be downregulated. I will be taking a super deep dive into chronic cell danger response mode coming up in the next video of this series, so stay tuned. This said, some hallmark initial warning signs of downregulated cellular energy production include frequent daytime fatigue but often tired but wired at night, brain fog, easily mentally fatigued after cognitive tasks such as reading, studying, etc., prone to anxiety and depression, gut issues, post-exertional malaise, chronic body aches and pains, non-restorative sleep, strong sugar cravings and a need to eat frequently, and low stress resilience, easily overwhelmed by life's demands. And as I went through this list, I wonder how many of them you said yes to. My guess is that many, if not most people, likely would say yes to several of these issues, which provides evidence that many are on the spectrum of mitochondrial dysfunction and a purposeful downregulation of energy production. In fact, I would say mitochondrial dysfunction is more the norm than the exception these days, with a broken circadian clock and lack of restorative sleep being primary factors that pave the way for chronic dis-ease to develop. In light of this, resetting the circadian clock and optimizing sleep are critical first steps within the Wellness Code approach for restoring and optimizing health. And a first step in this step is understanding some of the foundational principles of sleep, energy, and circadian rhythm. While there are many foundational principles to understand here, of which I teach thoroughly in the Wellness Code Practitioner Training Program, to keep this video to a reasonable length, I'm only going to present the first 5 of them, which I feel are most foundational. Principle number 1 is that your energy is the key to your ability to create a healthy, joyous, purpose-driven, and successful life. Without optimal energy levels, we cannot show up in our lives as the best versions of ourselves. Principle number 2, inflammation begins with reduced cellular energy production. The popular belief is that inflammation is the underpinning to all disease. This is not an untrue statement. Inflammation, however, begins with reduced cellular energy production. Without optimal energy levels in the cells, the body cannot detox, the immune system cannot function properly, we cannot turn the food we eat into usable nutrients, we cannot think clearly, we don't have the wherewithal to take care of ourselves to the levels we need to support optimal health, and the list goes on and on. And then all of this then triggers an inflammatory cascade. Principle number 3, we are natural beings governed by the laws of the natural universe. When we fall out of sync with the natural circadian rhythm of the universe, our bodies, minds, and spirits suffer. We are less resilient, more prone to illness, and therefore not able to be the best and healthiest versions of ourselves. And in this state, it is difficult, if not impossible, to cultivate a healing and growth mindset, restore our health, and be the people that we need and want to be. We can't be the employees, the parents, the friends, the lovers, the spouses that we want to be. Number 4, disrupted sleep and chronic fatigue are two sides of the same coin, linked together via circadian rhythm. When you experience chronic fatigue, whether you realize it or not, your circadian rhythm is not optimized. It may seem like you're getting a full night's sleep, but on a level likely outside of your awareness, the sleep is not deep and restorative or for long enough periods of time. Or you may be totally aware of very poor sleep quality and an unbalanced day and night cycle, but you're not quite sure what to do about it. And principle number 5, low cellular energy is a spectrum, and most people are on the spectrum to some degree, whether they realize it or not. Many people, myself included at one time, became very accustomed to living their lives on reduced cellular energy levels and merely pushing through so much that it became their sense of normal. It is often not until chronic fatigue and other issues associated with reduced cellular energy production become so pronounced that they are life-altering, bringing many people to realize they need to make some serious shifts in their lives. By this time, however, the dysfunction has often gone on so long underneath the surface that there are now many more layers to work through. And restoring optimal cellular energy production is going to take some time and is a multifactorial approach. This is often a difficult concept for many people to understand and embrace, especially because restoring cellular health must begin with lifestyle and self-care versus aggressive detox and pathogen eradication protocols. You see, the primary cause of chronic disease is stress, and the primary cause of stress is most often lack of self-care. Even the American Medical Association states that over 80% of all health problems are most often stress-related. This said, once a person falls chronically ill, if they don't first dial in on the fundamental pillars of health in terms of lifestyle and self-care, all the best, most cutting-edge supplements, detox and pathogen protocols, and other health hacks will not make much of a dent, if any dent at all, in creating sustainable wellness. And resetting the circadian clock and optimizing sleep are the most critical lifestyle and self-care interventions to begin with. In light of this, coming up in the next and final section of this video, I will present some initial strategies for doing just this. Before presenting the strategies that I have to share with you today, it's important to know that there are 5 major environmental cues that regulate circadian rhythm, and they are as follows: light, nutrition, temperature, movement, and connection with nature. A balanced circadian rhythm requires that we optimize each one of these. This said, here is a list of 7 of what I feel to be the most important initial strategies that anyone can begin implementing right now to optimize their circadian clock. The first strategy is to get at least 15 minutes of bright, natural sunlight at the beginning of your day within 30 minutes of waking if possible. This is important because by exposing your eyes to this bright light early in the morning, you signal to your brain that it's time to suppress melatonin production, which is the sleep hormone. In response, your brain will increase cortisol and orexin production. And it's important to know that orexin is the main neuropeptide produced in the brain needed for wakefulness and alertness. Morning sunlight also helps to warm your body up, facilitating your natural process of thermal regulation. If natural sunlight is not available, then consider a natural light box that emits 10,000 lux of bright white light. There are many of these lights available on the market, some of which can be quite costly, but I use and recommend the Happy Light by Verilux, which can be purchased on Amazon for around $100. Strategy number 2, block out or reduce as much blue light exposure after sunset by using blue blocking computer and phone apps, candlelight, amber light bulbs, and glasses that block both blue and green light. Blue light at night, coming from all the tech gadgets that we have all come to love and depend on, alters expression of circadian gene clocks and disrupts the whole hormonal symphony that relies on proper circadian signaling that comes from nature's light and dark cycles. Number 3, be sure your bedroom is pitch dark while you sleep. Use blackout curtains and/or a sleep mask if need be. Even a tiny amount of light, as low as 5 lumens, which indicates the level of intensity for just 1 minute, can throw off the circadian rhythm. This amount of light or more is present just from street lights outside of a window or a night light in the hallway. Studies have shown that people who have just a little bit of light while they sleep at night have a 65% increased chance of developing depression after 2 years. Because of this, light sources anywhere in the house where they could emit light into the bedrooms where people are sleeping should only be used during waking hours. Number 4, eat to reduce inflammation. I can't emphasize this one enough. A diet that does not support optimal digestion and gut health, brain health, blood sugar regulation, and inflammation control is a cell danger response trigger and will definitely trigger the mitochondria into defense mode and therefore disrupt one's circadian rhythm. I will be going into greater detail on nutrition for cellular health in a future video, so stand by. In the meantime, I suggest following the simple principle of JERF, which stands for Just Eat Real Food. Number 5, avoid eating at least 2 to 3 hours before bedtime and have at least a 12-hour fasting window between your last bite of food and your first meal the next day. During periods of fasting, and particularly when we are sleeping, cells go into autophagy, where they release nutrients for recycling and remove damaged or unnecessary cellular structures. This process is greatly supported by a healthy circadian rhythm. Eating too close to bedtime and with not a long enough fasting window thwarts this entire process. It's important to know and remember that, however, that if one has poor metabolic health, the body will have trouble regulating blood sugar levels trying to do a fast too quickly. Because of this, make sure to progress slowly to avoid drastic hypoglycemia, which are extreme blood sugar drops. Strategy number 6, be as active during the day as possible. Get exercise during daylight hours and do calming activities after sunset. Movement and activity are synergistic with light, temperature, and meal timing, and they amplify the circadian signal. For this reason, exercise and more demanding activities should be done during the day to reinforce the daytime signals and the production of cortisol and orexin. Lack of activity during the day and being too sedentary is just as disruptive to the circadian rhythm as too much blue light at night. And lastly, one's final meal of the day should have a larger quantity of protein content than earlier meals to cover the overnight fast. Unlike fats and carbs, which can be stored in the body, the amino acid pool is constantly being recycled and replenished by incoming nutrients or the body breaking down its own tissue. If one does not eat enough protein for their last meal before bed, the body will be more likely to be woken up during the night. Anyway, this is a wrap for the initial strategies to reset the circadian clock and optimize sleep and this segment of this mini-series. Stay tuned next week for part 3, where I'll take a deep dive into chronic cell danger response mode and shifting the body from defense to peace mode. Until then, be well and be empowered.